Welcome again to Life in the God Lane. I'm Tom West. I hope you will subscribe to my little channel. Hit the bell so you get notified every time one of these messages comes out, which is every day. And give me thumbs up, make comments, share this video with someone else. It could be very transformational to them. It's my power verse for the day from Psalm 103, verse 10. And this is for the 27th of February, 2022. And I call it How God Deals with Us. I was 18 years old. My dad was working as a civilian contractor in Vietnam. And this is 1967, a long time ago. And he was home for a month. And at 18, I was living at home, working in a gas station, trying to figure out how not to get drafted. I enlisted the next year. That solved that. But I came home after midnight one night when Dad was home that month. And as I sometimes did when I was 18 years old, I was quite drunk. I figured Dad would be in bed, but instead he was up watching The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. He looked at me, stood up, and said, "You've been drinking." I took a fighting stance, clenched my fist, and said, "Yeah, what are you going to do about it?" He backhanded me and knocked me across the room, the living room at 1425 North Beaver Street in Flagstaff, Arizona, where we lived. And I picked myself up, crawled off into bed. He dealt with me according to my sins, and he rewarded me according to my iniquities. Look at Psalm 103, verse 10. He has not dealt with us according to our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities. He talked about the benefits of God to his people. God's different than my dad was that night. My dad had to do what he did on that night, but God's different than Dad was in 1967. He does not deal with us according to our sins, and he does not reward us according to our iniquities. So how would God respond if he dealt with us according to our sins? What would God do if he rewarded us according to our iniquities? I suppose he'd cast us into the fiery pit of hell, consigning us to the eternal death of hell and separation from God. That's probably what he'd do, and we would deserve it. But he does not. He does not do it that way. So how's that work? Well, he decided to come to earth. We'll say this over and over. It's important. He decided to come to earth as his son, suffer and die in our place on a cruel Roman cross. You see, he took our sin and our iniquities himself, and he dealt with them and rewarded them himself by taking their death sentence for us. That's what he did. Psalm 103 looks forward 1,000 years from when it was written to when Jesus would come here and take our sin on himself. So God does not deal with us and reward us according to our sin. He paid for it. He paid for it, giving us a gift we don't deserve. You know what we call that? Grace. We call that grace. By the way, this is a moment I'll never forget, but that night in 1967, I was laying in bed after my dad knocked me across the room. And my dad came into the room. He turned on the light, and with tears running down his face, said, "I never wanted to hit you." And then he just said, "I love you." And I said, "I was wrong, Dad. I love you." Folks, Dad, he's been gone now about 25 years, but he was touched by Jesus' grace. And he touched me that night with Jesus' grace. Let Jesus touch you with his grace. And then reach out to others and touch them with his grace. It really matters. I'll see you tomorrow.